I always like to recommend printing your photos, especially printing them small. You might have seen it, but I made a whole video a while back just talking about all the good that printing does for your photo practice. But despite my love for it, not all photographs look good printed. Sometimes they just fall a bit flat on the page, and sometimes they just don't look quite like you expected they would once they're committed to paper. Today I want to talk about photographing for print, mostly for zine or book format, and about how knowing the intended outcome for your images can just help you shoot a little bit more intentionally. So, how do you photograph with print in mind? The first tip is a purely practical one. Be considerate of your photo's edges because they might not make it onto the page at all. The most common example of this is if you print full bleed, which means printing right up to the edge of the page. In order to achieve full bleed, you will either overprint, which means printing off the side of the paper, or you will print with borders and then just cut them off. If you know your photo project will include full bleed spreads, it's a good idea to photograph your subject with a little bit of breathing room around it. If you don't, there might be a little bit less of your subject that makes it onto the page than you expect. I actually like to place elements right up against the side of the frame when I shoot. And so I knew when I was working on my project Serial Music that I was going to be using borders and not full bleed. Knowing this ahead of time meant that I knew I could use the entirety of my frame without any worry, and that no part of my image was going to be lost due to a lack of planning on my part. Something that became clear to me when I started making zines out of my photos was just how often I put the subject at the center of the frame. That might have to do with me getting my first camera and Instagram launching in the same year, but yeah, who knows. When you start sequencing your images into a zine or a book or something like that, you'll notice that things can get a little bit repetitive when the subject is always in roughly the same spot on the page. Something I try to do is to keep the reader's eye moving on every page. If you place your subject in different parts of the frame, the reader's eye has to move in order to follow it. This act of searching and I guess uncertainty that your reader has about exactly where the subject is going to be on the next page just keeps them engaged and paying that little bit of extra attention to your images. Let me see if I can show you here on screen. So this is Exiles by Joseph Kadolka. Let's have a look at chapter 1. So right out the gate, we have our subject in the lower right-hand side here. From there, the eye moves back to the center, but there is nonetheless a kind of weight or gravity to this quadrant, just because of the addition of this chair frame here. The next image, my eye, is sort of drawn here first, I think because of the lighter jacket and the sort of clarity of this man's shape. But my eye then sort of moves through here and down through these men like that. This next image, I think at first glance it appears to be back to being a centered image, but the fact that these two are sort of mimicking each other but slightly apart For me, I feel my eye moving between the two of them. I don't take it all in at sort of one go, I'm flipping between the two. Then we're back here to the sort of lower left quadrant where I sort of follow this line up to this man's face. Then I move from the top left all the way down to the bottom right. Then I move from the top right all the way down to the bottom left. As you can see, like, eyes rarely do move around the page. And then back to a solid central framing, which in this case I think is really powerful, especially coming after these pages where our eyes have been moving all over the place. If you haven't seen it, Exiles, recommend. Hopefully you get a sense of just what it is I'm talking about. But if not, grab your favorite photo book and try to get a sense of how your eye is moving as you flip from page to page. Sequencing aside, it's a good idea to think about what singular images look great printed. In my opinion, photos where your eye moves through the image from one part of it to another work really well in print. Again, it keeps the reader's eye moving, and it also sort of encourages a deeper look at the photo. One way to do this is to have multiple points of interest in the frame, ideally at different depths. I keep referring back to serial music for my examples throughout these videos I've been making, but for a bit of a change of pace, let's have a look at some photos from a trip I did years ago to Russia. I was a pretty much straight up novice on this trip, and I was really concerned with making these like flat geometric images. When I look at a picture like this now, I kind of just get the sense of like my eyes bouncing right off of it. I guess there are like different things to look at, but there are no real relationships between them, and everything is on the same focal plane. So my eye sort of takes it in at once and then leaves at once. I don't really go searching through it. And this next image works a little bit better, I think. There's like multiple points of interest. There's like this person and what she's holding and what he's holding. And there are some like relationships that can form between them. Plus there's a little bit of depth in the background, which makes them kind of stand off the page a little bit. But like with them being on the same focal plane, and like it still feels like quite a flat image to me. I like this better than the first one, and there's like some like I guess interesting meaning and whatnot like you can read into it. But I still don't feel like it like really sort of stands out. This last photo though works the best in my opinion for print. That's because there are these multiple points of interest and they're on different focal planes or at like different depths. So you have this woman in the foreground, you have this boy in the background, and then this woman with the broken arm in like the middle ground, I guess. And it just allows my eye to move this way and form all these kinds of relationships between them. I just think like if you look at all three of these images, an image like this, it sort of gets you to look at it for a little bit longer. And I think it's that quality that works so well in print. I don't want to be too prescriptive with the things that I say here. So consider this next suggestion only if it fits with you and your photo project. Try picking a single focal length and sticking with that for the duration of a project. The best description I've heard for focal length is that it's like the tense of your images. And frequent switching between tenses can be a little bit disorienting. By picking a single focal length and sticking with it for the duration of a project, it just helps with a sense of cohesion for the sequence of images that you're presenting. Shooting very wide, say at 24mm, offers a bit of a destabilizing but also immersive perspective that enters into the subject's personal space. Shooting a more limited wide angle, like 35mm, offers a fairly naturalistic image, and it gives a sort of sense of, I guess, what I would consider a normal field of view. I find 50mm to be personally observational, and it's sort of like you're looking through the photographer's eyes, and also you're a little bit in the photographer's headspace. Then, as you get narrower with, say, something like an 85mm, the images begin to feel like photographs of something that is over there. It introduces a sense of distance between you and the subject. For serial music, I went with a 50mm. I wanted to give the reader a sense of, this is how I see things in Korea, and so I chose a focal length that makes images feel like observations. My point here is that different focal lengths carry different connotations, and these connotations are only emphasized by print. When you know exactly what it is you're trying to communicate, try picking the best focal length that will support that. My last suggestion, and this is for photography in general, but especially in print, is to be honest with yourself. Is every part of the image worth looking at? When framing up or when selecting your image, you'll know deep down if there are parts of it that don't add to the power of the image, or even worse, that take away from it. I'm not saying images need to be super busy. What I am saying is that when you objectify an image in print, you're going to be looking at the whole thing from border to border, and not just that bit in the middle that you might have been focused on when you took the shot. If you treat the entirety of the frame with care about what is and isn't included, I think you'll find your images imbued with a kind of solidness or dignity when they're printed that can really elevate an otherwise simple photograph. Serial Music Volume 3 is out now. Thank you so much to everyone who's been watching this series and picking up the zines. I really appreciate it, and it means more than you might know. If there are any topics that you would like me to deal with here, or maybe over at Substack, please do let me know in the comments below, and I'll see what I can do. Cheers.